I'm David Debato, and you've just entered the No Delusion Zone. Welcome to this edition of the No Delusion Zone. It is my pleasure today to welcome as my guest, Anna Babinets. Anna is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Slidstvo.info investigative journalism agency based in Kyiv, Ukraine. She's a regional editor of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, or OCCRP. Anna specializes in discovering high-scale corruption, money laundering schemes, and other serious crimes. Anna was part of the Panama Papers team, of which several stories about former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko's offshore companies were written by her. She is also one of the co-authors of Killing Pavel, a documentary about the murder of Pavel Sheremet, a famous journalist in Kyiv. In 2018, the documentary received the DIG Award in Italy and the IRE Medal in the United States. From the beginning of the current and full-scale Russian-Ukrainian war, Anna on Slidstvo.info focused on covering war crimes, reporting from the field, and researching and identifying Russian military units and soldiers in Ukraine. Anna, welcome to the No Delusion Zone.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Sure. Anna, first, I'd like to tell you that personally, I admire what you do. My experience before doing this was in criminal investigations, including national security investigations. So I really do appreciate the kind of work you do. I also know that public corruption investigations are perhaps some of the most difficult because some very important, rich and powerful people in the government and private industry will do almost anything to make your life difficult. You also become a very unpopular person among the rich and powerful, and that can result in personal danger. I know this very well. So I'd like to start with some general questions and then get to some specific cases. First, could you just tell us a little bit about your experience reporting during the Maidan protest, and if that experience influenced your decision to continue on as an investigative journalist and specializing in public corruption cases?
I've been working as an investigative journalist for 15 years. So it's already 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 president in Ukraine when I'm working as investigative journalist. So I can say that we worked with many different dangerous situations with different Ukrainian leaders. And if we're talking about Maidan, which happened 10 years ago, it was very important event, very important historical point for Ukraine, because Maidan happened because of pro-Russian President Yanukovych, who wanted to change Ukrainian way to Russian direction, not to Europe direction, and that's why started a revolution of dignity more than 10 years ago. For that time, I changed and I worked as a reporter from the street, from protests which happened mostly in downtown of Kyiv, and I had streaming. I was a journalist who showed what was happening in Maidan, when people were killed, when people were murdered in Kyiv. So what I did, I mostly worked as reporter. But after Maidan won, after Yanukovych ran away to Russia, it was new era for Ukraine, new era for Ukrainian journalism, especially investigative journalism, because it was a new time, new possibilities for us. And 10 years ago, it looked like we became like more democratic society. And Ukrainian journalists for the last 10 years became really important power in all processes which happens in Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I mentioned at the opening a little bit about something called the Panama Papers investigation. Now, for many of my listeners, especially here in the States and probably most people in Europe, that's not something that they would be very familiar with. So if you could, would you tell us a little bit about the Panama Papers investigation, including your role in it, the main characters involved, and just take us through the investigation, including the final conclusion and what eventually happened.
The Panama Papers, it was the biggest project by that moment, the biggest project of cooperation through journalists around the world. It was about 400 journalists from different countries who were working on secret files. Mostly it was files about offshore companies, mostly from Panama. And all of us together were trying to discover that type of tax avoiding, like offshores. And of course, many cases we found in former Soviet Republic, in Ukraine, of course, because in our country and countries around us, unfortunately, it's still part of culture, don't pay taxes. And big politicians, big businessmen use this. In Panama Papers, the story I was working on, that was story about Petro Poroshenko. At that moment, he was the president of Ukraine. And we found that he, right after he became president of Ukraine, in 4 or 5 months, he opened offshore company BVI. He opened that company for his own name. And when we figured out, we were working a few months on this story, that company connected to big Russian companies, confectionery, like very big confectionery company in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine. And one of Poroshenko promises before he was elected was that he will sell this company because it's very big and it looked like conflict of interest for the president to be a businessman. And he promised that he will do that. But when we found the secret documents about offshores, we figured out that he didn't want to sell this company or wanted to sell, but not paying taxes in Ukraine. So what we saw. And when we published that in spring of 2016, it was a very big scandal for months in Ukraine, and we were attacked hard, me as author of this investigation and our team, Slidstvo.info, because people who were big fans of Poroshenko, it was pretty strong community and it still exists, as they blamed us that we work for Kremlin, we work for Russia, because it was second year of a war which Russia started against Ukraine. At that time it was in Donbass. So that people blamed us that we working for Kremlin and we try to do something bad with our journalists, I mean, in informational reason. And it was really for months, it was hard, but in the end, President Poroshenko lost his rating. We didn't have any problems with facts, and his lawyers even couldn't sue us. Of course they wanted, but it was part of big international project and we checked everything, every number. So yeah, it was very big for Ukraine and for countries in our region. I don't know how about other countries, United States, it was not so big, but for countries like we have, and every time when we have this leaks of big database or offshores, we always find Ukrainian presidents or top politicians.
Let me follow up on that, Anna. I wasn't originally going to ask this, but I think I must. In your opinion, having done some really good and complicated public corruption cases in the last several years, do you believe that all or most of the public corruption cases are related to the legacy from the Soviet Union, or is there a distinct cultural difference in Ukrainian public corruption cases? Is it a homegrown phenomenon, or is it solely, could you lay this solely at the feet of your history within the Soviet Union?
Unfortunately, we all of former Soviet Union parts have a strong tradition of corruption because it was like language between people. And I would say that in Ukraine it's a little bit better because we are closer to Europe, and many people, many businessmen, young people visited Europe pretty often compared to Russia or other countries around. For them, it's like very big and very hard to travel somewhere. For us, it was easy. We had low cost flights, and it was easy to go somewhere for a weekend or something. And for Ukrainians, it's better. Situation with corruption. And why it's also better? Because we have pretty strong journalism, media, which controls this situation. And I believe that in the end, we will improve the situation with corruption. It's not possible to kill corruption at all. Of course, it will always exist. But for me, good recept against corruption, that if we have strong media, if we have no tolerance of society, and we see that Ukrainians are not happy with corruption and they don't tolerate this, and if we have good punishment instruments for officials, if they don't declare something, or if they have some money assets and it doesn't it's not according to their salaries, it should be real punishment in the end, and I think it will work. So there are three important directions how to fight with corruption, and I think Ukraine in right way. Of course, we have war now, but we still have fighting with corruption inside of country. And I think this process is going not so well as we wanted, but it's going on. And I believe that in the end, in future, we will be a better country with less corruption than we have now.
Again, as a follow-up to that question, do you believe that right now in Ukraine, that you have the proper institutions in place, the anti-corruption institutions, to not only investigate, but to enforce public corruption?
We have a few new government bodies. It's 3 or 4 important bodies which work against corruption. But for me, the most important and the best which works now, it's National Anticorruption
Bureau.
National. Sorry?
National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine.
No, it's different.
So
we have, this is, that's, I mentioned, this is 4 important bodies. So a National Anti-Corruption Bureau, they investigate corruption. But I mentioned National Agency of Avoiding Corruption. This is like prevention, body of prevention. So what they do, This is the place where officials should apply their declaration with their assets. And as journalists, we work a lot with the declaration. If something wrong there, this agency can check it, can start their own investigation on that if something not correct. For example, if we as journalists find some declaration and find some like very expensive apartment or villa or something, and we publish it, this agency can start their internal checking where this person has this money. So it's really very important agency, and it works pretty good. Talking about other this bureau and special anti-corruption prosecutors, it doesn't work as good as we want, especially because of the war. People really care about like harder and more important stuff, more important things during the war. And we see attempts from the Office of President to control these anti-corruption bodies. We see this, we see the signals. As journalists, we cover this, we show that it's not okay. Anti-corruption structures should be independent, but Office of President, of course, wants to control them, what we see. So of course, it's better than it was 10 years ago when we didn't have special anti-corruption agencies. Now we have them. They work, not always very good, but they work. And we, when we publish something, some anti-corruption stories, we always hope that they will investigate this. And sometimes it happens.
Okay, thank you. Talking about corruption and trying to tie it in, I think, to the dangers of investigating public corruption. Anna, please talk a little bit about Pavel Sheremet, about his work, his life, his death, and about the documentary Killing Pavel that you were very much involved in.
I mentioned anti-corruption investigations. We of course we focus on them because corruption is one of the biggest problem in Ukraine, even during the war. But before that, and we still sometimes work on criminal investigations about loud murders, killings, and we understand how to work with it. One of the biggest story for me personally and for my career, it was the documentary Killing Pavel, because it was a story about our friend, our colleague. We knew him. He was driving to his work. It was July morning, and in intersection in downtown of Kyiv, his car exploded. And in a couple hours we came to the place of murder. We knew that it was of course murder, and we started to collect video from CCTV cameras around that place. Fortunately for us, for investigation, it happened in downtown, where we found a lot of CCTV cameras, and people shared that video with us. We were collecting about 2 months, and then we started investigation. We compared, we showed, we watched all the video we collected, and we found some people who put the bomb to his car. We found some people who involved, and what's the most important, we found some suspicious car which was parked next to Pavel's apartment, and it was staying there for 4 hours. Then when we found the driver and asked him to explain what he was doing next to Pavel's apartment, Pavel's house, for a few hours during night, and his explanations were very weird. It didn't look like real explanation. And then we found that that person had connection with Security Service of Ukraine. He was former worker of Security Service, but I think not only in Ukraine, in other countries, security, when you work for Security Service, you can't be former worker. You always can can do some tasks, can do something because you are professional in this area. So we found this when we published our story. From our story, that murder looked like some people from security service connected to that murder. At least that information about that person and our findings were new for police. We published our story in 10 months after the murder, but our findings were new for police, and they restarted investigation. Our story, unfortunately, it's still unsolved. We still don't know who killed our colleague Pavel Sheremet. But we, for first year and for second, third year of investigation, we were following the story, and now it's absolutely stuck. Nothing happening there in the case, in the official investigation. But we're still following it, and I hope we will know who were killers of the journalist. We did our independent investigation. We published our findings, and it was pretty big for Ukraine. Colleagues started action who killed Pavel, and it was some protests in Kyiv, and yeah, and we got some awards outside of Ukraine.
Well, I watched the documentary, and also I wanted to tell you I'm going to be posting a link to that documentary after this interview. And I was, to be honest with you, and this is the no delusion zone, so I speak my mind. I think it's a disgrace, the investigation that was conducted by the police and the security services. And to my mind, having experience investigating such crimes, obviously there was collusion. It's been, as you said, how many years now since this has happened? And although some suspects were arrested, they were never convicted or even went to trial. Again, it's a disgrace. And the fact that your agency and you were able to come up with so much solid information very quickly, which the police was not, again, is just a disgrace. So kudos to you and your agency, Slidstvo.info, for doing this and coming up with the information, and shame on the Ukrainian, or at least the Kyiv police and the security service for bungling the investigation and apparently letting people in high positions get away with covering this up. But that's just me. I won't go on and on about that. Another documentary that I watched, which was excellent, and I'd like to talk about now, was your work and documentary on Ukrainian troll farms. At least in America, when we think of troll farms, we automatically think of Russia, of which there's a lot, especially created by the GRU, or Russian military intelligence. But you uncovered Ukrainian troll factories during an undercover investigation. And the documentary is called I Bot, Inside a Ukrainian Troll Factory. I'm going to be posting a link to that as well after this interview. Please tell us about this and take us through a little bit about the undercover investigation and the making of the documentary.
This is one of my favorite investigation, especially because we use this undercover techniques, which I like very much. Especially when we have young journalists who are unknown for public, and we have some special tasks. So we ask them to do something, because really it's one of the way to obtain information you can't obtain in other ways. Talking about troll farms, of course, it's not only, they exist not only in Russia. In Ukraine, it's, I don't think that now it's popular, but that times we published that 5 years ago. It was pretty popular, but it's small troll farms, you know, troll farms for internal using. It's not, you know, like for using for election in other countries or something like that. And we found really small troll farms, and maybe that's why it was easy to start working there for our journalist. Vasyl Bedun, he was a young journalist who just joined Slidstvo, and we we decided that it was a lot of talkings about troll farms for protecting some politicians, for supporting some politicians during election, during the process of election. And you know, in Ukraine, Facebook, it's one of the biggest platform for politicians, for young politicians. I know that it's not like in other world. In other world, Facebook is just place for publishing pictures with friends or with family. But in Ukraine, Facebook, it's one of the biggest political platform. During the politician processes, if some new politician or old politician wanted to have some support, they hired troll farm or just start a troll farm inside of their political party or something. And the trolls, what they did, they had to text some comments around all Facebook, some groups or some posts that person, that politician is very good and other politician is bad. I mean, I'm talking very simple, yeah, but it should be like something, some campaign, it should look natural, all these comments, all these opinions, and people who were texting them, they should look natural as well. Our journalist had about 30 profiles on Facebook, and he had to write like different messages from every profile to support some politicians. And what we showed with this documentary, we showed how it works, how much the small people who pretend to be 30 persons in one moment, how big is their salary, how it works, how where they get their task, what they should do. So we showed all this mechanism, how work troll farms. After we published the story, the troll farm stopped existing. I can say that that this problem does not exist anymore, but after that, I think politicians realized that it might be opened, it might be popular, and people will see how it works, and it's not good for reputation of politicians. And I think that they don't use this as much as they used. And of course, the policy of social networks changed a little bit because of this political support to troll farms. And now for me, it's not so big problem how it was 5 years ago when we published the documentary.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm going to be posting a link to that documentary after this post.
Thank you.
Because it was great work. I enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.
Let's try to bring your work a little bit more up to date and discuss what you're doing now and have since the full-scale invasion in February of 2022. What changed for your agency after 24 February 2022, and how did you and the other journalists working with you adapt to covering the war?
Since February 22, our work changed a lot. Fortunately, we were preparing to the changing. As you mentioned, I representative of OCCRP here. It's a network of reporters around the world, and many of my colleagues from other countries, they told me months before the war that you should prepare. So we bought everything for our agency. We bought all this these vests and everything for surviving during the war. And we also asked colleagues from Bellingcat to train our team with OSINT techniques, because we already we suggested that we will work on identification of Russian soldiers, Russian militaries. So we had 3 days training from Bellingcat. All of Slidstvo.info journalists knew the best techniques of OSINT. And that's why when in first day of full-scale invasion, we already published story with identification of Russian pilot who was killed next to Kyiv. We identified him, found his profile on social networks, and tell a small story who is he and why his military unit here in Ukraine. For first months of full-scale invasion, we worked mostly on identification of Russians who came here. This is our work to solve crime, to show crimes, to find people who committed crimes. And this our tools and what we can do with looking, finding people who committed crimes. We did that, and even in first months of the war, we trained Ukrainian prosecutors and other representatives of official structure how to identify Russian soldiers, because they never worked with that, they never knew what this OSINT is, and they needed this to working on investigations of that crimes. So we had few trainings for them. Yes, so work of our agency changed a lot, and especially because also 4 of our members, we have 15 members of our team, and 4 men were recruited to army. So now they are in army, and of course it's big loss for us. I'm happy that they help army with their skills they have as journalists, but it means for me as a manager that I need to find new journalists and to teach them, and it's always hard for investigative journalists. So we journalists in Ukraine, it's not only hard times for us because it's the war, it's also hard time because we know that we can lose members of our team. Vasil Bidun, who was that bot, the guy who worked on undercover, now he is in army for more than a year. He serves, and I hope when the war will finish, he will come back. He's really great, very, very talented journalist, and I really I miss him and other members of team who are in army now. Yeah, our work changed a lot, but in second year of the war, we realized that it's not only problems with Russians, it's the main enemy is journalists, as citizens. We understand that. We collect proofs, we publish small stories, big stories, documentaries about war crimes, but also we understand that our Ukrainian internal housekeeping of Ukrainian officials are not in the best conditions. They are not doing the best they can in this situation. And we came back to anti-corruption investigations. Now we're doing them. We showing how Ukrainian officials manage with war, how they doing their work. We show this story, and partly our work still to show war crimes, and partly investigating corruption in country.
I just want to add, for those who may not know, you had mentioned OSINT several times. That's open source intelligence. And it's something that anybody can do, but it's very, very complicated and detailed work. So I just wanted to add that for people outside of the journalism or intelligence field. I want to ask you now then, Anna, about, I think it's your most recent high-profile investigation, and that involves the Ukrainian Security Service, or SBU, and some rather serious allegations of corruptions by one of their high-ranking officers, a general, as a matter of fact, and his wife. It also involves allegations that the SBU targeted the journalist, your journalist, who wrote the story by illegally serving him a notice of conscription shortly after the story was published. Again, another fascinating investigation, and one that's ongoing, as a matter of fact. So please walk us through this investigation, and if you could, tell us the current status.
Security service is a very important official structure during the war. Of course, they are doing some special operations. They work with enemy. They fight with enemy in not a direct way. And I heard a lot of good things about their work in frontline and about their special operation. So they are doing their work, and we are happy with that when they are doing their work good. But when they think that they can be like selected people who can do more than others, it's not good. And that's why we started this investigation about the head of cybersecurity department of Sbu. Because we got from our sources information that he lives a luxury life, that his family has some really luxury some luxury apartments in Kyiv, and it's not according to his salary. That's why we started to check the property of his family, called to his wife, to his mother, because we saw that apartments officially registered to his mother and his wife. And we tried to figure out from where he has so big money. And we found that his family a few months ago bought apartment in Kyiv, which cost with reconstruction $1.4 million. It's a lot. And his salary is much smaller. He couldn't do it for his salary. And we also tried to figure out with income of his wife, and it looks pretty suspicious what she is doing and what money he has. And we were just published story. I would say that it's classical investigation. It's not like something we it's not like undercover work or something when we were something big. Yeah, we just found declaration of this person, declaration of asset. We checked the property in official open database, and we just called him and his family. It's like absolutely normal work for Ukraine. We and our colleagues publish stories like this a lot. It's not like something new. And that's why I was really surprised with punishment which journalist got, the journalist who worked on it. In few days before publishing, our journalist were going home, and he went to supermarket to buy some food. It was 9:15 p.m., so it was almost night. And some military people came to him right in supermarket and tried to give him some money for going to military, to army. And when he told me that, and he started to film them, he started filming the process, and he asked that military people if it's somehow connected to his investigation about the guy from security service. They said, no, we didn't know anything. But when he showed me that video, I realized that we need to obtain video from CCTV cameras, which we did many years ago when we were working on killing Pavelori. And when I came to that place and asked about CCTV cameras, I saw the military people were led by some person in civilian wear, in civilian clothings, and for a couple days we figure out who's the person. Our sources helped us to figure out that person who showed militaries to whom they should come. It was employee of cybersecurity department of security service. So it looked like that person from security service, we were investigated, that most likely he told his employee to find our journalist and to send him to army. So how it looks like now. And I was really surprised when we found out. I couldn't imagine that security service doing this kind of special operation in Kyiv instead of special operation in frontline. And we make this story big to show about abuses from security service, what they do instead of working against enemies, not against journalists in Kyiv.
I agree with you. And again, I watched the videos that you had posted from the surveillance cameras. And to me, again, having done some work like this in the past, it's very obvious what happened. And again, a disgrace. It's too bad. But I know that this investigation is ongoing. In fact, I think you recently just met with some personnel from the SBI as well as the SBU. And so I won't pursue that because it's an ongoing investigation. Anna, how have investigations like this impacted you personally, your personal life, including security concerns, safety concerns for you and your family, not just with this investigation, but some of the other ones that we've already talked about in the past?
Usually when we worked on stories like this, we have like some protocols before publishing. Few days we should pay attention about everything, should use different type of going home, going to work. And 2 weeks after publishing, it's also risky weeks, and better don't go dark alone, and using different way to going home and other cyber security stuffs we use. But of course, journalists who working in investigative direction, they know that this dangerous, this is part of our work. And we have some trainings, we have some stuff how to avoid this, how to increase some impact from this stuff. But it's part of our work. For example, Vasil Bedun, who was working as a troll in the troll farm, after we published story, we sent him to different country for 1 month. We had proposal from our colleagues about trainings, about some fellowship program. And right after we published story, we sent him from country for doing this fellowship. So because we understood that for that troll farm, it was pretty sad that because of that story, they were closed, and we suspected that it might be some, emotional stuff to do against our journalist, against Vasil. That's why we sent him for months, and after 1 month, situation was better. So yeah, we use some stuff to increase these bad things for us, for our families, but it's not possible to avoid this at all. We just tell our families, we just tell members of our families, be careful, but they understand everything. It's part of our work, and we just do this, and we always understand that it might finish with bad stuff. And the best for us, it's our reputation, friends around the world who always support us. And for Ukrainian authorities, support from other countries, from international community, international journalists, it's always signal that they can't do everything they want with journalists, because it will be noticed around the world. And that's why they keep their wishes to do something worse, because I understand that all the world can see that, and it will make a lot of troubles for Ukrainian authorities if they will do really, really bad things with journalists.
Well, Anna, your work, I mean, you and Slidstvo's work is so important, because right now, and it's no fault of Ukraine, Ukraine is fighting 2 wars, really. Obviously, the war against Russian aggression, but also the anti-corruption war, because even if, not if, when Ukraine wins the war, they still have to deal with this entrenched corruption. And as you well know, that is one of the main obstacles to Ukraine joining both NATO and the EU. And your agency has dealt with both of those head on. And it's just too bad that Ukraine has to fight a hot shooting war. At the same time, it's fighting its own corruption issues at home, but there is no choice right now. So again, your work is just so important to Ukraine's future. And is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't already asked?
No, I think we talked a lot about many years of my work on our agency. Thank you for these questions, because when we live day by day, we forget about stuff we experience it, and now for me it's good to remember about them, remind about them. So thank you.
Well, again, in my opinion, aside from the military angle and what the Ukrainian military is doing, I think what you and your agency and some of the other anti-corruption agencies are doing in Ukraine right now are the most important work going on in Ukraine. And I just wish you future success. Anna Babinets, founder and editor at Slidstvo.info. Thank you for joining us today on the No Delusion Zone. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for watching this edition of the No Delusion Zone. And remember, there are many delusions out there, but only one truth. Stay safe.